Hi there. You're listening to English Podcast for Beginners, your friendly guide to learning English step by step. Let's learn, practice, and grow together.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material, your articles, notes, research, and just distill it down so you can get smart fast. Today, we are diving into something that is, well, it's central to literally every single one of us, the essential language of food and cooking.
It's a fantastic topic. And the source material here, it's less about actual recipes and more about the architecture of how we talk about it all. We're really looking for that framework, the sort of hidden grammar that lets people communicate what they eat and why they love it, almost without thinking.
Exactly. So our mission today is to uncover those core linguistic parts. The key words, sure, but also the sentence structures that define how people actually talk about meals and how they make them. We're going way beyond just the ingredient list.
Right, because food is universal, but the language we use for it is super specific. And by looking at the simple patterns and verbs in this source, we can give you a kind of shortcut to understanding the whole conversation around food.
And the goal for you, our listener, is pretty simple. Walk away with a quick, solid grasp of how these structures work. So you can talk not just about what you ate, but, why you ate it and what was going on in your head at the time. Okay, let's unpack this. The foundation has to be the essential lexicon, taste and preference. The research is clear that any food conversation starts with descriptive words. But we want to go a little deeper here.
Precisely. Everyone gets sweet and salty. That's level one. The real insight from the notes is how just a handful of words, adjectives, and nouns basically cover 80% of all conversations. You've got your basic, sweet, salty, spicy, sour, and then the big evaluation words, fresh, healthy, delicious.
And you combine those with the core nouns, meal, dish, ingredient. With just that little toolkit, you're basically conversational.
But hold on, why does the source stop there? I mean, if we're going deep, what about more modern terms like, say, umami, or something like mouthfeel? That's a great question. And the source seems to exclude them because it's focused on high-frequency, everyday talk, casual conversation. In reality, people often just substitute, we say savory when we probably mean umami, or maybe satisfying when we're talking about mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It's a linguistic shortcut. It's all about efficiency, not necessarily, culinary precision.
So it's linguistic triage. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, just describing something isn't enough. We have to talk about enjoyment. And this is where the sentence patterns in the notes get really, really fascinating.
They do, because they start to reveal the psychology behind our choices.
Yeah.
We move beyond just saying, I enjoy pasta, or my favorite dish is chili. They're static.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Based on the structure we looked at, it's that more nuanced phrase, I like eating X when I feel Y.
Yeah.
That one little phrase completely changes the conversation.
It really does. It shifts food from just being physical fuel to being, an emotional tool, a coping mechanism maybe, or something for celebration. That little when I feel clause is the real insight here. It connects the food choice directly to an emotional state.
Can you give us a concrete example of that?
Oh, absolutely. Think about comfort food. The analysis suggests you might say something like, I like eating a heavy, rich soup when I feel stressed. Or the opposite, I like eating something light and sweet when I feel celebratory. The structure lets you talk about the purpose of the food. It's not about the soup being salty anymore. It's about the soup solving the stress.
So we're not just learning words, we're learning how grammar can reveal someone's internal state. And this really encourages you, the listener, to start thinking about your own preferences, not just by flavor, sweet or sour, but by situation. What food gives you quick energy versus what food is for just relaxing. It's kind of like food as medicine, all framed by language. But okay, taste is internal. The next big debate is universal. Where are you actually getting the food? Let's pivot from cravings to that huge daily choice, the one that needs a totally different vocabulary, cooking at home versus eating out.
A crucial distinction, and the research shows it creates these two almost different dialects. You've got your recipe speakers and your menu speakers. Well, you talk about home cooking. The words are all about the physical space and the process.
Right. It's domestic and action-based.
Yeah.
You're in the kitchen, you're following a recipe, maybe you call yourself the home cook. And the focus is on the big creation verbs. The three fundamental ones for heat are to boil, to fry, and to bake.
And this choice, cooking at home, is linguistically tied to active participation. It's a grammar of accountability. For instance, you use an active voice. I prepared dinner. You're taking direct credit or blame for the outcome.
And you can contrast that so sharply with the language of eating out. There, the focus immediately shifts from making something to, well, buying something. We're not talking about shopping anymore. We're talking about ordering from a menu.
Exactly. The whole conversation becomes about administrative and financial things. It's about the cost, staying on a budget, using verbs like pay or tip. The structure has moved completely away from the physical process and into this socioeconomic transaction.
And the notes do a great job laying out the arguments for each side, almost like it's this daily negotiation we all have with ourselves.
On the home cooking side, it's all driven by control and finance. The key phrases are things like saving money and choosing healthier ingredients. It appeals to the person who's prioritizing long-term value, maybe sacrificing a bit of time.
But wait a second, isn't that distinction getting a bit blurry? I mean, with all the dietary restrictions today, doesn't ordering out sometimes give you more control? Does the analysis talk about the rise of customization, words like gluten-free, nut allergies, substitutions?
That's a really sharp point, and it's a fascinating wrinkle. While the, let's say, core motivation for eating out is still convenience, the modern menu speaker needs a much richer vocabulary. They have to use the language of limitation, of special requests. The original source focuses on the main argument, sure, but you can definitely infer that modern dining needs that transactional vocabulary, plus this new, very specific language of dietary control.
That makes a lot of sense. It shows the conversation is evolving, but I guess the core tension is still there. So what does it all mean? It means the language you choose signals your priority for that day. The language of control and cost points to home cooking, while the language of exploration and convenience points to eating out. It's like a linguistic barometer for our daily choices. Okay, let's move from why and where to the real nuts and bolts of how we make it. We need to focus on the language of instruction, the action in the kitchen, the verbs that get a recipe done.
This is where language becomes very functional, almost mandatory. We looked at the most basic action verbs, the real building blocks: to cut, chop, mix, stir, heat, taste, and then finally to serve. This is the lexicon of the kitchen command.
And they are, by their very nature, sequential. This is the key technical insight here. Cooking is linear. It has to be. If you do the steps in the wrong order, the dish just fails. The grammar has to reflect that sequence.
And what's fascinating is how the instructions are segmented with specific markers. These markers are the non-negotiable guides for anyone following a recipe, no matter how simple.
The analysis gives us a perfect, really simple example of this. It starts with a foundational action marked by first. So, first, chop the vegetables. That sets up your prep work, your raw materials.
Then you get the transformation, which is signaled by then. Then heat the pan and stir the ingredients. That's the method, the actual cooking part.
And finally, you have the quality check, signaled by finally, taste the dish and add more salt if needed. And that command, taste, is so interesting. It forces a pause for subjective quality control. It makes the cook switch from just executing to evaluating before they serve.
Exactly. The structure is logical. Prep, cook, finalize, evaluate. And understanding this linear framework is so valuable for you, the listener, because it helps you process any set of step-by-step instructions. It could be a recipe, it could be for assembling furniture. It just reinforces that clear, linear structure needed to get things done. It makes an abstract idea really tangible.
That clarity really is powerful. It's not just about verbs anymore. It's about structural logic. All right, let's shift gears now away from prep and taste to the idea of health. Long-term well-being. This means we have to bring a whole, specific health lexicon into the conversation.
This is where the meal starts connecting to your daily performance. We need the vocabulary that lets us analyze food by its function, not just its flavor. So that includes terms like balanced diet, nutrition, energy, vitamins, fresh food, and of course distinguishing between high-calorie snacks and planned meals.
So food talk isn't just salty or delicious anymore. It's about sodium content or energy density. It's a totally different metric.
Which brings up the critical question: how do we actually translate this knowledge into daily choices? According to the source, the language of health is the language of intention and replacement.
Ooh, that's a powerful way to put it. Intention means commitment, right?
Correct. It's focused on the positive action you're trying to build. Things like, I try to eat more vegetables, or I am committed to a balanced diet. It's an active decision.
And replacement is about a direct trade-off. Swapping a bad habit for a better one. I drink water instead of sugary drinks. It's a deliberate comparison.
And this framework is so important because the payoff is spelled out so clearly. The source talks about the benefits of balanced meals, and it immediately connects food to boosting things like focus and general energy. It changes the whole conversation from just enjoying food to actively using it to improve your productivity.
It's the language of fuel and function. It frames eating as this active decision you make to fuel your mind and optimize your day, not just avoid bad things. We're going to end our deep dive by connecting all of this technical language back to cultural enjoyment and just exploring the world. The research really encourages you to take this structural understanding and just apply it in new places.
This part is a lot of fun. The source concept is all about sharing light, interesting tidbits about food from around the world. We're shifting from the necessity of health to the pure joy of exploration, talking about popular dishes from other countries or even surprising food combinations.
Yeah, it serves as this great practical bridge. But if we go back to that sort of limited 80% vocabulary, sweet, salty, spicy, sour sheep, how do we actually use that when we find something truly foreign? Like, how does the word spicy in an American context even begin to cover the complex layered heat in, say, Thai or Korean food?
That's the real challenge.
Okay.
And the basic vocabulary acts as an anchor, but its meaning has to stretch. In Southeast Asia, spicy might need extra words about cooling ingredients like citrus or coconut milk to give it the right context. So the framework teaches you to look for those local modifiers. You use what you know about the structure to navigate the cultural differences.
So we're encouraged to use our new structural language to talk about a dish we've never even tried, like describing the sequential steps of making kimchi or analyzing the cost versus convenience debate around street food in a new country.
Exactly. This final section is the ultimate practical application. It encourages you to use all this newly analyzed vocabulary to go out and actively explore new foods in your own life. The structure is simple enough to be used right away in a social setting. It's the moment where all this academic stuff becomes a dinner party conversation starter.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the fundamental language of food and cooking. We analyzed the grammar of personal preference, right? That powerful structure of I like eating X when I feel Y.
Okay.
We decoded the different vocabularies for cooking at home versus ordering out and saw that tension between control and convenience.
We broke down the essential sequential language of instructions, first, then finally, and how it creates that mandatory order. And we cataloged the vocabulary of healthy eating, linking it directly to the language of daily focus and energy.
The core idea here is pretty undeniable. When you learn complex concepts through a relatable, everyday topic like food, the information just sticks. It's easier to retain and much easier to apply. You now have a pretty sophisticated framework for talking about everything from a simple breakfast to a global delicacy.
It's a complete, actionable picture of a culinary conversation ready for you to use.
So, for a final provocative thought for you to chew on, the research emphasized sharing fun food facts and surprising combinations, right? And we saw how the language of preference links food directly to emotion. So consider this. How many of our deeply held food preferences are just cultural rules we've learned versus actual biological needs? And think about how learning the language of food allows us to challenge those rules in our own kitchens, making new connections, building new habits, just by changing the words we use to describe what's on our plate.